What is going on, people? We are live. DFS, college football, the best show in the business, certainly the best free show in the business for college football DFS, for all you diehards out there. College football diehards playing DFS. This is your one-stop shop. You get a full slate preview. You know what it is every single week. It's me, JD Yonke, at YonkerCFB on Twitter. My co-host, Kevin Mount, at DFS CFB Guru. How we doing, Kevin?
Good, man. Gotta make up for last week. Last week was a little brutal, so we're trying to turn the page and looking forward to a better week.
Yeah, I don't even know how much I want to talk about it. It was so silly. Everyone was getting injured.
Yeah.
Miles Price injured. Braylon Allen did nothing. It was tough. There were some easy plays on the slate last week, and none of them went through. It was pretty wild. So, we have, how many games is it? Is it 13, 14?
I think it's 14.
14 game slate, and it's a loaded one, Kevin. What's your initial thoughts when you're sitting over here? So if you're new, we're going to go over every single game, player by player, every single relevant player, give you the stats you need to know, give you the insight you need to know, whether they're a cash play, whether they're a tournament play, if we're feeling anything on their props, all that good stuff. But overall, before we start, Kevin, what are we thinking about the slate?
I think it's kind of a week where you're going to kind of stay in the mid-range guys. There's not a ton that I really want to pay up for at any position. So I think it's kind of a mid-range week for me. Couple lower price guys, couple higher price guys, but a lot of guys in that 5 to 7 range that look like good plays.
Yeah, it's DraftKings in-season main event. So they have a huge $100,000 tourney that you can get a ticket to, which I don't really know why they do those tickets if you can then multi-enter anyway. But so that's exciting. So I've been really, really devouring the slate since it came out, even more than normal. And then they have their usual 50,000 for the main tournament. So I've been devouring this one. This is definitely the tightest price of the season by far. In my opinion, it looks like they just kind of skipped over last week to focus on this week. The pricing. So I can't hit on the pricing too much. So if you're here for the algorithm bashing, probably not going to hear a lot of it this week. Looks like there were some manual overrides, and they're doing a pretty good job. All right, first game of the week, first game of the slate. It's not a stellar one, Kevin. Not a stellar one.
No.
We have Missouri going up against Florida. Missouri, Luther Burden, of course, is the all-star freshman. He's probable to play. I guess you can go check the latest news for whether or not he's deleting Missouri on his Instagram yet again.
I think you might have froze. So talking. Oh, there you go.
Kevin, are you following the 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids playing college football? You're following their Instagrams to make sure whether or not they're deleting their team's information, because there seem to be a lot of accounts out there doing that. Have you stooped that low?
I have not. I just stay on Twitter to get the updates because you're gonna get them there anyway. But it's a crazy world we're living in right now. So no, I haven't gone that low.
Yeah, I don't know why you would. Okay, so any interest in Missouri? I mean, their offense stinks. They did almost upset Georgia, so there's that going for them.
Yeah, I have no interest. There's just nobody there that you need to play, especially on this slate. So no.
Yeah, I don't really know why you would personally. So nothing for me. The running back room, I mean, that's really what you're going to be interested in this team, and they're still splitting carries between Pete and Schrader. So hard to play them. Florida's rush defense is really bad, so I'm kind of considering Missouri. They rank 117th in rushing PPA. That's predicted points added. You'll hear that a lot. And they're 122nd in rushing success rate. So Florida stinks at defending the run. We've seen it multiple times this year. They're just not a very good football team. You can run on them. That being said, Missouri, the week of Georgia, letdown spot. 2 guys getting carries. I'm not really sure I could recommend them. I think Pete is the more exposed player. He's probably the one I would consider in tournaments, although I don't really think anybody's going to be owning these guys either. So if you want to get to Schrader at 4.2K, he did have a pretty good week last week. Averaged 14.8 yards per carry against Georgia. Not everyone's going to do that. Had that one nice run. That was pretty good. But yeah, really not interesting. All right, let's turn it over to Florida, Kevin. Is this an Anthony Richardson week in your opinion?
I think it is, but I'm generally wrong with Richardson. So it looks to be the week because he has a really nice price, and he was kind of one of those guys I was saying is in that mid-range that has really big upside. He's got 4 to 5 total touchdown upside here. And at that price, he makes a really good play. He's not the most consistent guy, but he's playing better now. So I'll definitely have some Richardson shares this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's boom or bust. He's every sense of the word. So everyone's tweeting, making fun of him, including me. I like to tweet, make fun of Anthony Richardson. I'm not really making fun of Anthony Richardson. He's a great player. I love watching him. He's very fun. He runs very fast. He's big, and he can throw the ball 80 yards. So it's more just making fun of the analysts who are hyping guys like him and Will Levis over a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud, so to speak. That's mostly it's not directed towards the college kids. It's directed towards the idiots analyzing him. Yeah, he's tantalizing. He can run. There were questions about his health. And then when they played Tennessee, he had 62 rushing yards on 17 attempts to touchdown. So it kind of showed that's where his value is going to come from. This team's probably not going to throw the ball all over the yard like they did against Tennessee. So I don't think I'm going to get there this week, Kevin. Missouri's defense, I don't know what to say about Missouri's defense. They were so terrible stopping the run to start last year. And then they just turned into a fairly good team. They're 23rd overall in success rate. But they are 83rd in explosiveness, and Anthony Richardson is the definition of explosiveness. So he could break off a few big ones in this one, and he does have a nice price. So tournaments only. All right. Next game we have Tennessee versus LSU. Tennessee is always on the slate. So they love and then some Tennessee in this game. On the slates. The over-under in this one is 64.5. It's a Tennessee game, so you know what you're getting. Should be a good game, Kevin. I'm seeing some -3s and some -2.5s. As well. I've heard the models are all over the place on this one. I've heard a model saying Tennessee by double digits, and I heard one saying LSU favored. So it sounds like there's going to be some contention this week. Do you have a strong read on either side?
I think it's probably going to be close, and it's surprising because Tennessee obviously has a much better offense than LSU, but Tennessee's D just isn't very good, and LSU can certainly score on them. So it wouldn't shock me to see LSU win because that's what Tennessee does, right? They lose the games they should win. So wouldn't shock me to see Tennessee lose at all. That said, Tennessee obviously is going to put up points and some fantasy points. So definitely going to have some vols.
Well said, I think. Injury news in this one. Cedric Tillman. It sounds like he's going to be out a couple of weeks. I believe they call it a tightrope surgery. Okay, there it is. Tightrope surgery. They said Tua Tagovailoa had the same thing, kept him out 3 to 4 weeks each time. So he's going to be out a little bit. That leaves Jalen Hyatt at 6.9K. He is priced very expensive, but he should be the main guy in the slot. And then Brew McCoy really took over. Still has a decent price at 5.7K. Had 100 yards and a touchdown. Where are we going here on Tennessee? Are we playing Hooker? Are we playing as receivers? Are we stacking them? What are we thinking?
Yeah, definitely. If you're playing Hooker, you're definitely stacking. With one, possibly two, you could do a double stack for sure. Of the two, I actually like Brew McCoy a little better just because of his prices is a lot lower. And a guy that is worth a shot as a dart play in tournaments is Keaton at 3.8. He's getting some run, and he's one of those types of guys that's going to be really, really low owned, and if he gets 70 and a touch, he's going to hit, he's going to do good things for you.
There's not a lot of lower price guys, Kevin. This is the first week where there's not a ton I love. I think there's two I'm considering playing. I'm not sure I'm going to play Keaton, but he's definitely a guy I wrote down. Yeah, he moved into pretty much a full-time role last week with Tillman out. It was basically him, Hyatt, and McCoy on the field for all the snaps. He was on there for 37 pass snaps. Of course, he only got 3 targets, but he did turn it into 69 yards. And this offense is going to throw a ton and run a lot of plays. So I like that. Brew McCoy, I think, is probably the best price adjusted option at 5.7K. I guess probably tournaments only because this team throws it deep, and Brew McCoy, calling him a trustworthy player is definitely not the first thing I would do, Kevin. Trustworthy human or trustworthy player. I think Hyatt's going to be peppered with targets. I did play him over 4.5 receptions on Prize Picks. I really, really, really like that. He's been smashing that every week. And without telling him, he should continue to smash. Are we getting there with Tennessee's running game, Kevin?
I don't think so. I like Small, and he's productive, but they do run right, and I don't think I'm going to get there. I think LSU is better defensively than obviously they were last year. So I think Tennessee, when they score, they're going to score through the air. So I'm probably not going to get there.
I agree. I think LSU's been good defensively. 18th in PPA overall, 24th in success rate. The one I'm monitoring here is that Robbie Ashford, the quarterback / baseball player on Auburn, who really hasn't done much all year. He threw for 337 yards and a pair of touchdowns against LSU. They didn't score a lot of points, but they were moving the ball. So I said, how the hell did that happen? Because I agree. I thought LSU had a pretty good defense. I still think they do. Their top cornerback, Seven Banks, I believe he's the Ohio State transfer. He got a head injury in the first quarter and was hospitalized. So if he's hospitalized with a head injury, I doubt he's going to be seeing the field, especially with the Tua news. Hard to miss every year. So I think Tennessee's going to throw the ball here. So I agree. I think any of their options are fine. All right, looking at a run back, anytime you have a game aligned this close with an over-under at 64.5, you have to at least consider LSU, which might be a little tough, Kevin. LSU's numbers haven't looked fantastic, but when you take a look at the advanced numbers, they're actually a lot better than I was expecting. 19th overall in points, predicted points added, 27th in success rate, and they've been great rushing the ball. 3rd in rushing PPA, 8th in rushing explosiveness. I assume we should be interested in the running backs here. What are we thinking for the running backs? Any interest at all?
So if I am going to play a LSU back, Emory just doesn't. He never does anything. But actually, the guy who got 17 carries last week for 70 yards was Josh Williams, and he's $3K. So at min price, he's certainly worth a look. Actually, it gives you some flexibility elsewhere if you're going to throw him in against a not so good Tennessee defense.
I think I agree. I don't really want to play running backs against Tennessee because their secondary is so bad, and they're actually pretty good against the run, 8th in success rate against the run, which was really surprising to me. And in there, the writers that cover that team are like, yeah, look, we have a good defensive line, and then am I crazy for thinking? So actually, let me do this before you call me crazy. You can call me crazy in a second. I want to make the case for Jalen Daniels this week. Okay, I understand he was 8 for 20 passing last week for 80 yards. Kevin, he didn't even complete a pass in the second half. Okay, that's not bad things have gotten, but I want to make the case for him. Robbie Ashford tore this team, Robbie Ashford and Jalen Daniels last week. It was a very strange game, right? Ashford's kind of torching secondary. Jalen Daniels on the comeback. LSU just kind of suddenly realized they can run the ball whenever they want. You're right. They had Josh Williams run the ball. They had Emory bust off some big plays, and they just ran the ball. Okay, so there's that. Also, Tennessee's pass defense is absolutely brutal. They're 119th in coverage grade per PFF. That's really not good. 85th in explosiveness, 85th in passing PPA. We have also seen I think we've also seen Tennessee, like, they have a good defensive line. I think you can burn them if you play a rushing quarterback. And Jalen Daniels, like we saw, if it is a close game, we saw what they did in that Florida State game late. Like, they just ran Jalen Daniels. So he can run, and this is a team you can throw on. That's my case. Tell me why I'm stupid.
No, I don't mind it. I just don't like his price. It's a little too high for me. But I can see the case for sure. And it kind of goes to a guy that I want to play so badly, but I played him last week on FanDuel, and he had 1 catch for 4 yards. He had 1 more catch than I did sitting at home, right? And he had a whole 4 yards. I want to play Booty so bad, but I don't know if I can get there. But man, it's so tempting. Like you said, they can throw on him, and if he's ever going to have a great game this year, this should be it.
Yeah, I'm not going to end up advocating it. I totally agree. He just doesn't look good, Kevin. It's just not there. I agree. I played him last week for sure. I think it was the night slate. He was 3.2K. I'm like,
sure,
potential first round draft pick. I don't know about anymore. He's fallen off a cliff, but I'm like, for 3.2K, come on. It's not there. Mason Taylor actually led this team with 7 targets a week ago. Butte was out there. He was playing 31 pass snaps, but he's done nothing. He has 4 drops in 4 games. That's about all he's done. So I can't really get there. All right, so let's move on to Arkansas versus Mississippi State. Arkansas was absolutely torched by Alabama a year ago. Not looking so hot. KJ Jefferson, that's some big news to target in this slate. 6.5K, that's a good price for a guy like KJ Jefferson against the Mississippi State team that has been burned by dual threat quarterbacks before. But it looks like he had a concussion last week. Most likely, they don't really report injuries very well. There's no standardized reporting. college football, so we don't know. But it sounds to me like he's in concussion protocol. They asked Sam Pittman directly, and he did not very stealthily avoid the question. So he's in concussion protocol. Surprisingly, they put in Cade Fortin as the backup, even though Malik Hornsby has been listed as the backup quarterback and kind of has been for a while. But they put Cade Fortin in the game last week. So I'm not so sure. But all I will say is this. Malik Hornsby might be the fastest quarterback in college football if he plays. They've been playing him at wide receiver a little bit because he's so fast, you can't keep him off the field. And if he's at 4.5K as the fastest quarterback in college football, that's just like, oh, man, I have to be interested. But, Kevin, I don't even know if he's going to start, whether or not KJ Jefferson is out. It sounds like they might rotate these guys. So what are your thoughts here on the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I'm staying away. I want no part of it. It's just too much uncertainty. I don't want any part of it. What I think it does actually, and I know you like this guy this week also, what I think this does is, especially if KJ Jefferson is out, I think it means Rocket Sanders is getting 30 carries. So I think it just pumps up his volume even more, right? He already gets 20, 25 a game. I think it just pumps him up even more. So 6.2, he's a really good play.
I agree. I think he's the top option on this team. Mississippi State, decent defense, but against the rush, that's like easily their weakness. 83rd in success rate, 82nd in explosiveness against the rush, 92nd in PFF's rush defense grade. And Rocket Sanders has just been a workhorse. Like, he went for 100 yards against Alabama, right? He's a good receiver. He has that PPR upside. He's been getting 20 carries pretty much every single game outside of the Texas A&M game. So I don't see what there's not to like for Sanders in cash or tournaments. Last year against Mississippi State, Dominique Johnson was actually the one who had 17 carries for $102 and 2 touchdowns. So I just don't know what the deal is with Dominique Johnson. They're not giving him the ball. This year he only had 2 carries. It just seems like it's Rocket's show to run. And especially without KJ Jefferson, I could see him just really leaning on him. I think 30 touches is easily doable. If you're playing cash and not playing Rocket, I'm not really sure what to tell you. Any love for Arkansas's wide receivers?
No, I won't have any.
Me neither. All right, Mississippi State. They received a price bump. Will Rogers was priced way down last week. He's up to 7.7K this week. He's got some wide receivers. Basically, every time I see Mississippi State or a Mike Leach team, I want to see at how the team they're playing has defended the air raid previously, because some teams are finding more success. So the weird thing in this one is that Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator for Arkansas, he kind of had a reputation for knowing how to stop the air raid. Like, he was the one who kind of originally figured it out back in 2020 in SEC play when KJ Costello got off that torrid start, and then Barry Odom said, hell no. And then he kind of wrote the playbook for what to do. My issue with that is that was when Will Rogers was a freshman. He's now a junior. And I'm not sure you can just sit back and quote unquote stop this air raid attack. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than that. I think they have some good receivers. I think Will Rogers is great. I think they could find success. We saw that last year against the better Arkansas defense. Will Rogers threw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, even though they only scored 28 points. So basically what I'm asking you here, Kevin, is Will Rogers, do you have to play him this week? That's a pretty good price for a guy who's going to throw the ball 50, 60 times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to play him, but I certainly will have some Will Rogers. And Arkansas against the pass isn't very good. They just got torched. Who just torched them? Somebody just torched them.
Well, Bama, they've been torched all year, Kevin. Here, let's pull it up. They're 126th in PFF's coverage grade, 124th in passing explosiveness. So they've been torched.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have to play some Will Rogers. It's funny though. I think you can play Will Rogers naked, right? You don't need to stack the receivers because they throw to 12 guys, and I'm so tired of playing ducking. So I'm going to ducking this week, and this will be the week he goes off. But it's too hard to predict. So you can just throw Rogers out there and play receivers from other teams. You don't need to play any of his guys.
I agree. I like playing Rogers naked. I agree. I definitely agree with that. They spread the ball out. Last week, I don't know what on earth got into them. I know they're like rotating wide receivers. They played 10 wide receivers last week. They had 10 guys between 19 and 26 pass snaps. So, I don't know. And last week, I counted out, hey, I know they're rotating their receivers, but the 2 guys who are on the field all the time are Austin Williams and Caleb Ducking. That's what they did throughout the first 4 weeks, right? And Ducking's 6'5". He's been the best player, the best receiver. I said, at least this guy I know will be on the field. He was outsnapped by the backup, 26-20.
Yeah.
So when you think you have Mike Leach figured out, you don't. Is all I'm going to say on the wide receivers. I think Rod Thomas and Caleb Ducking are the two best for what it's worth. But yeah, I don't think I can really get there. If you're playing 150, throw a few of those guys in your lineup if you want to. All right, TCU versus Kansas, Kevin. Again, Kansas in another huge spot here. This is very odd. Very odd. Game day is going to be there. It's their best start since 2009. And hear that repeated a lot. Now ranked for the first time since 2009. The first time they're ever going to host college game day. Pretty big news here, Kevin. But they're playing a TCU team that just absolutely put a beat down on Oklahoma. That must have been sad for Oklahoma fans to watch. Don't mean to rub it in, but that was brutal. That was brutal. Let's start with TCU here. Sonny Dykes takes over the offense. All of a sudden, they're scoring 1 million points a game. Max Duggan at quarterback. Quenchon Johnson on the milk carton. Some other wide receivers going off. You have a good running back in Kendra Miller. Where are you turning your attention to?
Well, I mean, the way he's playing, you have to have some interest in Duggan, right? He's just been on fire. The problem with him is I generally get him wrong when I play him. He doesn't do anything, but I mean, he's been on fire. So his price is still really good. Again, he's one of those guys in the sevens that, could be a great play. I don't want any of his receivers because Quenchon Johnson is awful. He's just terrible. I'll never play him. And the other guys, the ancillary guys just don't do anything either. So again, you can play Duggan naked just like you do with Rodgers. And Kendra Miller has been really good. They do split carries, but he's their home run hitter. So I don't mind him as a play either. I think he's $6K, which is a really good price.
I agree. You have good prices on these guys. I think it's Duggan and Miller for me. I kind of mention it every week, but this TCU team is just weird. That's the best team. That's the best way I can describe their start. They've just been weird. Okay, I don't know how to read them because Max Duggan, like you look at his stats and he looks like he's like a precision passer, dropping dimes left and right, very accurate. And like, I know Sonny Dykes is a good offensive coach, but no, that's not what Max Duggan is. Like, if you watch the Oklahoma game, he played well. I'm not shitting on the guy. They're doing great as a team, but like Oklahoma just busted coverages. Like dudes were wide open all game. Like nobody within 30 yards of them. So I'm not really sure. And then when they played Colorado in the opener, like I don't know if Chandler Morris is just the worst quarterback of all time, but like they did not look against Colorado, and they didn't even like their final stat lines ended up looking fine, but like they looked worse than pretty much every other team that's played Colorado. So yeah. I don't know what to do with TCU. And then they go out and play Oklahoma and just blow the doors off them. Very strange start. Like I can't really figure out what this team's going to look like. If you ask me what they're going to look like in 3 weeks, I don't think I would have a very good answer for you. All right, Kendra Miller is where I'm turning most of my attention to. I think Max Duggan's fine. Okay, he plays for Sonny Dykes and he's a dual threat. He's absolutely fine. I wouldn't stack him. I'd run him naked. The secondary options are not very trustworthy in my opinion. Okay, Kendra Miller is one of my favorite running backs in college football. You can go read. I wrote a huge chunks and paragraphs about why I think this guy's really good. They've ran for over 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns already this season, Kevin, as a team.
Yep.
The season just started, and I think they've already had a bye week, so that's something. I can't really figure out how good Kansas State's rush defense is. I mean, last week they did well against Iowa State, but Iowa State was ranking in the 90s in all their advanced rushing metrics heading into that game, and I'm sure they're ranked farther outside of that after going for only 26 yards on 30 carries. That's not good. But Jarrell Brock did get injured very early in that game. That's another injury that happened last week. That was very fun to deal with. But TCU is way better running the ball than Iowa State is. That's not even up for debate. They're number 1 in rushing explosiveness and number 2 in rushing PPA in the entire country. So I think Kendra Miller here is pretty good. I don't think he's a must play. I think he's a tournament guy. Reason being, his volume just is not exactly secure. This Duggan will run the ball, and they like to throw the ball, and they like to get the backup in there. Demarcado. I already said that dude's name. So he's high variance, but 6K is just way too cheap. He should be at least 7K. All right, let's turn our attention over to Kansas here. What are we thinking for Kansas?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get there on Kansas. I can see Daniels at 6.9, but I think he's banged up. And he had a stinker last week. I don't know if they had anything on the blur, but I think he got banged up. So I'm probably going to stay away and not have any Kansas this week.
I don't think I'm getting there on Jalen Daniels, and he's obviously he can go for blow up spots. It's a good offensive coaching staff, and this kid can run, but I'm not really sure. I'm not going to talk you off of him, but not for me this week. I think TCU's defense, again, it's hard to tell how good they are. They've had a weird schedule: Tarleton State, Colorado, etc. And they had some busted coverages last week that Dylan Gabriel just he just overthrew the guys. Dylan Gabriel did not have a good game, and then decided to murder Dylan Gabriel instead of playing the full football game with that insanely dirty hit. That was terrible. Did you see that, Kevin?
Yeah, it was awful. If that was the NFL, he would have been suspended 6 games and fined $200K.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. The news in this one for Kansas, they've been splitting carries at the running back between Daniel Highshot Jr., he's been a very good running back, and Devin Neal. Then, of course, Daniels run the ball as well. So the volume hasn't been there for this team that most expected to be a rush first team, but they haven't been rushing the ball well, which is weird for a team off to a hot start. They're only 72nd in rushing success rate. Devin Neal, I kind of want to play him at 5.48. That's a good price against the TCU defense that I think you can run on this team. I think you can probably run on 87th in rushing success rate defensively. So I kind of want to get there with Neal. I'm going to end up playing his price picks over 12 and a half. But for a guy who doesn't catch passes and a team that divvy up, they're still going to divvy up carries. Like Kai Thomas, the transfer from Minnesota, he'll probably just step in and like steal 10 carries. So difficult for me, but I might play a little bit of Neal in tournaments, and I avoid their wide receivers for sure. All right, Brett's in the house. He says, "Thanks guys for the video." Thank you for watching, Brett. You're the man. All right, I suppose this is the game of the week, right? Texas, Oklahoma.
Yeah, probably.
I guess that makes it like not the most fantastic week, but hey, it's an interesting one because Oklahoma's down, and Steve Sarkisian, his team just cannot stop shooting themselves in their own foot. So if you love some Schadenfreude, then this one might be for you. Texas, they have the price king at running back, Bijan Robinson. Sounds like Quinn Ewers is going to be back at quarterback. He probably gets the start, but they haven't said. And then you have some cheap wide receivers against an Oklahoma defense that just forgot that they were supposed to tackle or cover people. So where are we looking at Texas?
I mean, I guess Ewers, if he's starting, he's 6.5. It's a great price. Like you said, against just a really bad Oklahoma defense. Obviously Bijan, he's a stud. So if you want to pay up, certainly worth it. Oklahoma is just brutal on D. I probably won't get there on Bijan just because he's just so expensive. But especially I can't fault you for doing it. The play, obviously, that I think we both like is worthy at 6.3. He finally had a blow up week last week, and actually could have had a bigger week. I think he had he was overthrown on a deep one and might have had one called back and still had a huge game. He looks like he's finally healthy. And he's their deep threat. So 6.3 should be a great cash and a tournament play.
I don't hate that at all. I love everyone. Well, I don't know what to love everyone's team. I love the plays you just mentioned. Bijan at 9K. If I can get there, I'm going to have a little bit this week. I don't think you have to. They just keep pricing running backs at 6K. That should not be 6K. So it's going to be hard for me to avoid that range because that's been the way to win. But it's like if you just kept playing the guys at 6K, you're like, these guys are too cheap. Like you would be crushing it. So I've been kind of getting fancy and getting off of that. Like the Braylon Allen shares last week, I had a few that I was just like, why the hell did I do that?
Yeah, I did too.
Like Kendra Miller 6.2K. Why am I doing that? So anyway, but Bijan's fine. Everything here sets up for a smash spot. Oklahoma ranks outside the top 100 in rushing PPA and rushing explosiveness, and Bijan Robinson has just been killing it. I think this is a game where they feed the beast. I think he goes off like if he has a monster game, like 200 total yards, 3 touchdowns, like least surprising thing of all time. But of course, who knows? Xavier Worthy at 6.3K. I made some absolutely god awful lineups last week that he kind of saved me there with his 39 fantasy points. I agree. I mean, he had some duds to start the year. It sounded like he wasn't really totally healthy, and they were dealing with bad quarterback play. I guess the concern is like if he were back and his collarbone was still kind of messed up, and they just kind of don't really know what to do offensively. But I mean, like Oklahoma has the talent defensively, and this is a rivalry game, so I'm not totally told that Texas just blows them out of the water. But how bad they looked last week, And then you throw in the fact that Venables, defensive system he's a great defensive coach, but it's known for being the most complex in college football. Kids can't pick it up in 1 year, especially when you have the roster turnovers and transfers. I know you say throw the records out, you throw everything out in a rivalry game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Texas blows them out here. They should blow them out. If they're ever going to do it, they should blow them out here. So I like those plays. I guess the new year on here, if Dylan Gabriel doesn't play, Kevin, are you even considering if he does not play?
No, I mean, the only guy I would consider even if Gabriel's out, because I think Eric Gray is banged up too, but I'm not positive on that. And I don't know if Marcus Major is going to play. So if both guys are out, you could certainly take a shot on Barnes at 4.4. He actually looked really good last week when, in a blowout. But that's only if Major and Gray are out. If they're not, then I won't have any Sooners.
Yeah, Barnes was a guy who got great pub throughout both camps and looked absolutely great in the spring game. And they went to him. Yeah, Major, they're not giving an update on Major status. I guess I'm assuming he's out this week. Otherwise, they would have updated us otherwise. And yeah, he saw 16 snaps compared to Gray's 18. Overall, I just don't find this Oklahoma team very interesting in the first place because their prices are so high. And then this backup, the Pitt transfer, Davis Beville, I guess is how you're supposed to say that. I mean, he's ready for the job. This guy's not good. And Texas's defense, surprisingly, has been really good to start the year, man. 15th in success rate against the rush, 22nd on standard down success rate. They've been pretty good. I don't see a reason to get there. I wouldn't be surprised if they went to a different quarterback. But again, it's kind of similar to the Arkansas one, where if there's like three guys that are talking about taking snaps in practice, it's General Booty, best name in college football, General Booty. He's supposed to be like a better passer. He's a transfer who went in there. He could open up the offense a little bit. So I might be interested at min priced if I know he's getting the start, but I don't think we're going to know that. I think they're going to stay mum about this in a rivalry game to force Texas to prepare for two quarterbacks. I think Texas is going to be mum about their quarterback situation as well. So you're getting some mental warfare here because both teams are preparing for multiple quarterbacks. So overall, that makes this a mess at quarterback, and I'm staying away.
Yep.
All right, Michigan versus Indiana. Is it a Blake Corum week or a JJ McCarthy week?
I mean, I would think it's still a Blake Corum week with some Donnie Edwards sprinkled in. Actually, probably a little more. He looked good in his return last week, so he probably gets a little more and takes a little more off Corum's plate. Corum's just running so well. He's running really, really well, and they fed him 29 carries last week. Should have no problem against Indiana. So I don't mind playing, both not in the same lineup, but I don't mind having some shares of Corum and some shares of Edwards Edwards, what, 4K?
4.6
or 4.6. Yeah. So, yeah, I think play both of them. I think they should roll over Indiana. Indiana lost to my Nebraska team. So that's all you really need to know.
All right. So let me make the case for JJ McCarthy, and I'll start by saying I probably won't play a ton of him. Here's the case for JJ McCarthy. He's a 5-star. He's a dual threat. He can run. That alone makes him interesting. Okay. Indiana's defense is way better against the rush. Okay, 29th in success rate against the rush. And they're brutal against the pass, man. 112 in success rate against the pass. 109th in coverage grade per PFF. They haven't been able to cover anybody. And for a team like Michigan, last week they played Iowa. They did what they had to do. Their schedule is really easy. That was one of their only tests all year long at Iowa. They fed the beast. They did what they had to do. They fed Corum. They got out of there with a win. Okay. Here against Indiana, they can probably play with their food. They're going to want to build some confidence in JJ McCarthy. He really hasn't looked very good, to be honest with you, the last two games since being named the starter. After getting off to a start, he completed 30 of his first 34 passes this season. And since being a starter, he's been fine. He's been completing his passes. It's been whatever. But, the passing offense has just looked far from dangerous, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And now you finally get a match against the absolute cupcake offense. I could see them building JJ McCarthy's confidence here. I can easily see him throwing for 3 touchdowns, rushing for another, and possibly even more in tournaments. Am I saying it's a sure thing? No, because if you have Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, why don't you just give him 50 carries combined every game and just win there and get out of there? I think it's because you want to keep these guys fresh. I think you're going to want to keep Corum fresh. That also kind of makes me gravitate towards Donovan Edwards because, yeah, I rewatched the Iowa game. They got him in there, I think, on the first drive, right? They were giving him passes. He ended up catching a touchdown pass. He's one of the best receiving running backs in college football. He's a very talented back. I think he's going to be in the NFL. I think he's going to make himself some money someday. And yeah, he's returning to health, and they trusted him early in the Iowa game, didn't give him many carries. But again, here where you're going to want to keep your guys core fresh in a game you should not really need them against Indiana. Yeah, I think I'm making a narrative here. I think Edwards is probably going to be my most owned guy on this team. I really want to play him this week. I get it's risky. It's definitely a tournament play only. But I think any of those guys are fine. You play any Michigan wide receivers? I personally do not.
No, correct. Nope.
I don't do it. McCarthy makes it so, because if he hits in tournaments, it's probably because he's rushing for a decent chunk. All right, Indiana. Tell me why we should game stack this one with Indiana.
Yeah, we want no Hoosiers this week. I think Camper is game time decision. Same thing with Matthews. I don't think Matthews plays. I don't know if Camper plays. So Bazelak's going to get destroyed. I don't want any shivers. Yeah, I won't have any Hoosiers.
Yeah, Camper being out last week was another. Was that last week? I think it was last week he missed. Surprisingly, it was a crusher. Yep. Michigan's 4th in rush defense, 7th in coverage grade. And Indiana could be without their 2 best players, which are the 2 wide receivers. So no, thank you. All right, we have Purdue and Tennessee are on the slate every single week, man. Purdue, I've mentioned it before. They're always underpriced. They did a better job this week. At least Charlie Jones is up at 7K. Did have another dud last week. Again, all the good players had a dud last week. He was still targeted. I think it was 10 times. Still had 6 receptions. But Aiden O'Connell, their quarterback, was playing through a rib injury, and it looked like he was playing through a rib injury. They're calling him questionable again this week. One has to assume he's going to play if he played last week. But just the fact that they're still monitoring his status and they won't really say for sure if he's going to play or not after he played last week tells you how banged up this guy was last week. So probably going to be banged up still this week. But they're playing a Maryland defense that I know, Kevin, you do not value very highly. So I'm curious to see whether you're getting to Purdue this week.
I'll definitely have a couple O'Connell shares. I thought I saw he was good to go. I mean, a lot better than he was last week. So at 6K, I'll definitely have some. Again, even when he's healthy, they never get his price right. So yeah, I'll have some shares against Maryland. I don't really like Maryland. I don't think their D is nothing great. So yeah, I'll some O'Connell at 6K. Unless I see that he's really banged up and is a game time call, but I think he's in a little better shape this week than he was last week.
Brum said a couple hours ago that he's fine, so yeah, he's probably fine. Yeah, I agree. Minnesota was a tough matchup last week, and it was on the road against Minnesota, so it's really hard. Like they had the number 1 defense in the country headed into that matchup, and yeah, Purdue pulled off the upset. That's great, but like. I don't think O'Connell looked healthy. I think Charlie Jones looked healthy. He got injured on the first drive, looked pretty bad, and missed the time. I don't think he looked healthy when he came back again. So if Purdue was healthy, I think I would smash him here. But that's keeping me off a little bit. I think Charlie Jones is probably my favorite play out of these guys. He's just going to get a million targets. The thing with Purdue, I mean, they always have the great wide receivers. And this year, it's just been Charlie Jones, the guy who's been like a kick returner and been playing in 3 different colleges. And he's been their most productive guy by far. Like no one else has stepped up behind him. I mentioned last week that TJ Sheffield moved to an outside role, and he ended up seeing full-time snaps. So that's something to monitor, but he's done absolutely nothing. Byron Tracy is playing more finally, but he's still doing absolutely nothing. Yeah, it's tough for me to trust. I think Vanderbilt, the tight end, I say this every week, I think he's probably going to be their second leading receiver this year, but even he hasn't been trustworthy whatsoever. So hard for me to get there. I actually have an interest in a Purdue running back this week, Kevin.
Do you like Downing or I guess Downing, right? Or Maccabee.
Maccabee, yep. Whatever his name is. All right, so they finally listed this kid as a starter. I think he's a walk-on redshirt freshman. Someone correct me if I have that wrong. He's come out of nowhere, and he has double-digit points, and I think it's 4 straight weeks. Yeah, 4 straight weeks. He had 20 points. They use him in the passing game a little bit. I think they should use him a little more. He's still going to split the snaps with Downing, yes, but Maryland's not good against the rush. They're 87th in rushing defense, 85th in rushing explosiveness. I might have a little bit of Maccabee as a pay down option. I understand it's pretty nasty. But Purdue's actually been good rushing ball, Kevin. It's been weird. They're 16th in the country in rushing success rate. They never do it. 127th in rush rate. But if they get a lead here, could be some Maccabee. They're 2 plays away from being 5-0. Purdue's been playing pretty good football. I get it's not trustworthy, but I might get there. All right, let's look at Maryland. Tagovailoa, obviously the quarterback sounds like he's good to go. He's been banged up a little bit. Also dealing with rib injuries. So 2 quarterbacks dealing with rib injuries. That's fun. And another team that likes to divvy up carries between running backs, and pretty similar teams, to be honest with you, when you look at it from that perspective. What are you thinking for Maryland? You playing them this week?
Probably not. I never play Tua's brother. I just never play him. I don't think he's very good, and he usually smashes against terrible teams and does nothing against decent teams. So I won't play him. Again, the receivers, they throw to 5 different guys. Demas is a shell of himself, so I can't play Demas. Littleton actually has been getting some work the past couple weeks. Last week last week at 19 carries for $120. So, but that was against a terrible Michigan State team. So, I don't mind him at his price, but I'm probably not going to have any Maryland guys this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any Maryland guys. I could make the case for a couple of these guys, but I'm just not going to do it. Well, just when you think you have a Maryland running back figured out, you don't, because it's how they use their running backs. It's how they've always used their running backs, right? Yep. If they use a bunch of them, hard to tell. It's not trustworthy. And then as far as wide receivers go, they have 4 pass catchers with at least 10 receptions and 200 yards. Didn't really spread the ball out. Rakim Jarrett has been the guy playing a full-time role, but they rotate the other guys. And he did lead the team with 8 targets a week. So if you really want to play them, I would play Jarrett if you really want to play one, but I don't. And then last week, Purdue allowed only 44 rushing yards to Minnesota, and Minnesota's much better rushing ball than Minnesota, in my opinion. So not going to get there. And Purdue, I don't know. I thought their defense was going to take a pretty big step this year. They lost their defensive coordinator. They lost George Karlaftis. It's just not easy pieces to replace at Purdue, but they're only allowing 2.9 yards per carry. So they've been impressive to me. Last week was a wake-up call for me. I'm staying off Maryland personally. All right, moving on. Auburn, full skip, right?
Absolutely. I think the Georgia D is going to come out angry this week. So they didn't look very good last week against Missouri, and I think they're just going to destroy Auburn. I could see like a 42-6. I mean, I just think it's just going to be brutal.
Yeah, Auburn's offensive line ranks outside the top 110 and pretty much, outside the top 115 in all my offensive line metrics I'm looking at. So you're playing Georgia. That sounds like a recipe for someone to get murdered. So I don't even think I'm going to watch this game, Kevin, because I don't want to witness murder. Okay, go watch a Dahmer documentary if you want to see some sicko shit. I don't want to see this one. Okay, sorry there. Got a little dark. I'm skipping Auburn. Georgia. I don't really play Georgia players. Maybe the occasional Brock Bowers play, but Auburn's a pretty bad football team. So are you getting there this week?
No, not for their price. Stetson Bennett's way too expensive. 8.3 is that's insane. Bowers at 7.1. Again, it's too expensive. He has games where he has 80 receiving yards and 2 rushing touchdowns a couple weeks ago, but then he has games where he just, it's just not worth it, right? So I won't have anybody in this game, period.
I agree. All right, moving on to some real football out west. We have Utah versus UCLA. This is actually one of the top games of the week. 4-1 Utah, 5-0 UCLA. UCLA did pick up a big win against Washington last week. A Washington team that people were really liking. I do like their offense. I don't know about them as a team as a whole. That means UCLA is going undefeated and playing in the playoffs, right, Kevin? Undefeated UCLA.
Yeah. Well, the problem is with when Chip Kelly's been in Westwood, Utah destroys them. I think it's like the past 4 years, Utah just hammers them. So I don't know. I like Rising. I like him, but I don't like his price. 7.9 is really expensive. I don't think I'll get there. Tavion Thomas, way too expensive. Like I don't know what the pricing. That's about the only really off price I would say. This whole slate is right here. I have no clue why he's 8.4. Even if he's back to getting 60% of the carries, which I don't think he is, he's still not worth 8.4. So the guy on Utah I would have some interest in is Kincaid, the tight end, because
baby.
Yep, because Kuthie's out for the year, and Kincaid's 4.4, and Vele is way too expensive. So I'll definitely have some, I definitely think I'll have some Kincaid exposure.
All right, so let me tell you where I'm starting this handicap, because I agree with you when you said they've been smashed by Utah the last 4 years. What I wanted to say is that's what happens when you play any team with a pulse.
Yeah,
UCLA, they beat up on bad teams. They get smashed. Last year, they went 8-4. Their record against teams, against losing teams, 8-0. Their record against teams with a winning record that went bowling, 0-4. I thought that team was better than this year. I'll give them credit. They've looked better than I thought, but they played a cupcake schedule. They played one team with the pulse, South Alabama, and they really should have lost that game. And again, I don't really like saying should have lost, but I mean, I don't know. That's a win, technically, but barely. And then they played Washington. I actually thought they looked pretty good on Friday. I'm going to give them kudos, to be honest. But again, I think Washington's overrated. Go ahead and look at them. And I love Washington's offense, but as a team, I mean, go ahead and look through the teams they've played. Washington, I mean, no wonder they were winning games. No wonder they were undefeated. They were playing, cupcakes. So Utah should roll them, but that's the basics of where they should roll them. But my thing with Utah is that they beat them 44-24 a year ago, and I think Utah is a slight step back from last year. And I mean, UCLA returned 7 starters overall. Like, I still have a question mark pretty much everywhere for UCLA, to be honest with you. But I'm not sure I can trust this Utah team right now. They're not running the ball as well as they typically have been. And then, Tavion Thomas is in the doghouse again because he always fumbles. I'm not sure what's going on there. And then defensively, Utah hasn't been able to stop the rush, which could be concerning in this matchup. I don't think I'm getting there with any Utah guys. I like the way you broke it down. I thought about making a case for Cam Rising because with the running back situation in flux, going against the UCLA defense that I think you can run on. A team that has question marks up the middle on the defense, in my opinion. They're good at the defensive ends. Those Murphy brothers they got from North Texas. Those guys are fun. Watch the Murphy brothers. They wear the long sleeves. They're fun. But I could make a case for Rising. Okay, and I thought about it, but I have question marks there. I also have question marks the tight ends. Like he being out, I do think it could be a very solid play. If he was 3.4K, Kevin, I would have him in every single lineup, to be honest with you. Yep. Andy Ludwig, their offensive coordinator, he likes tight ends more than any other coordinator in college football, and that's considering something. That's saying something considering the Big Ten exists. Okay. So, but the prices are a little too high. So I'm not going to play a ton. This one could be a shootout though. Like, this one's in the 40s. I don't think anyone would be surprised. Both defenses, I have questions. Okay. Turning over to UCLA. Some good prices here. DTR 7.8, Zach Charbonnet 6.8, and then Bobo 6.5. That's a little high. Where are we going to play DTR? Are we going to play Charbonnet? What are we thinking?
Well, I generally get DTR wrong. He's him and Max Dugan. I generally get them wrong. So he looked great last week against Washington. Did you see that touchdown run where he basically froze 2 guys and just made them look stupid? So that's obviously what he's capable of. So at that price, he absolutely a good play. I think I have more interest in Charbonnet. He's kind of turning it on, and I just think he's really good. He didn't look great earlier in the year, but the dude's a beast. And like I said, I think you can run on Utah a little bit, and his price is really good. He's one of those guys in the 6K that we talked about earlier that, you play him, and you play Rocket Sanders, right? And you don't really need to play the higher price guys. So that's kind of where I put him.
I think Charbonnet is going to be one of my more difficult decisions. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to play DTR. Like Clark Phillips III is, in the corner for Utah. He had 3 interceptions, including a pick 6 a week ago. So I think they can cover that. And then DTR's passes, like half of them have been at or near the line of scrimmage. When you're playing cupcakes, that works. Playing against a team like Utah, I don't really know about that. But Charbonnet, yeah, dude, Utah's rush defense, I don't really know what's going on there. But losing Devin Lloyd, I mean, that's probably what's going on, right? He's now like close to being a front runner for defensive rookie player of the year, if they even give that out. But yeah, they ranked 70th against the rush, 88th in rushing explosiveness, 65th in success rate. I think you can run on this team, and a Chip Kelly running back is one of the most valuable positions in all of college fantasy football. I mean, it has been forever. That's the one constant in Chip Kelly's offense. Like, he likes to switch up his offense, kind of similar to like a Belichick, other than them being grumpy old men, right? But yep. It's kind of similar in that he changes his offense's game plan based on based on the defense they're playing. I think here you feed Charbonnet, you become a smash mouth team. But it's hard for me, Kevin, because like the point I made earlier about UCLA and big spots, it's hard for me. But yeah, Charbonnet, I mean, the fact of the matter is he should be above 8K. He's a Chip Kelly running back. He's 6.8K playing a team that's struggling to rush the ball. So I think in tournaments, an explosion from Charbonnet is on the table. All right, Texas Tech versus Oklahoma State. Big 12 has turned into a defensive conference, but not for this one. You have two teams that are going to throw the ball a lot. You have Texas Tech ranks 123rd in rushing rate, and then Oklahoma State ranks 102nd. And both teams play at a high tempo. So Texas Tech, the prices are really cheap in the passing game. Tell me where to look, Kevin.
Well, you obviously you have to look at Smith at quarterback. He's been better than I thought he would be. I didn't think he was much of a passer. He can run. He's an athlete. But $7K, he's a really good price. And a game that should be what's it over under 60, 62, somewhere probably around there, 64.
Let's check.
So
it is at 68.5. All
right, 68.5. So even better. Okay. So, for $7K, I think it's a great play. He has the possibility of adding a rushing touchdown with his legs. So that's always good. I don't want any of their running backs. They run a few guys and they're just not worth it. I don't generally play Texas Tech running backs. The interesting thing obviously is their receiver, right? So Miles Price went out last week. I think it's an ankle, right? I think it's an ankle.
Yeah.
I personally don't think he's going to play. They haven't said if he's going to, but I don't think he's going to. And if he doesn't, then you just brought the guy up who Xavier White, who would play his role. I think he had 9 catches last week.
Yeah, 10 targets, 9 catches. Yep. Was the only Texas Tech receiver all season, which is crazy to think in a Kitley offense, all season to break the 100-yard barrier and against an FBS team.
Yeah, it's and he's 3.4. So, if Price doesn't play, he's obviously a smash play. Not a problem, but recently these types of plays have not been working out. But he's set up for success if Price doesn't play. So I think you have to have exposure. I don't think you want to have exposure in every lineup, but you certainly have to have some exposure.
Yeah, the variance is huge because figuring out the Texas Tech wide receivers has been a pain. And I did think I had it figured out last week correctly. The issue was Miles Price got hurt, went to the med tent. The fact that he went to the med tent, did not return, was crazy to me. I had him locked up in so many lineups. I had him locked up in prize picks. But the fact that Xavier White got 10 targets after that, and then Nehemiah Martinez, the other slot guy, who's at min price, by the way, and he could rotate in there. He caught a touchdown. It just should have been a smash spot. So I think if Price doesn't play, and I think we're going to get news later. So I did some deep diving on this one because it might be the news of the slate, right? They have a bye week next week, Kevin. So you would think you just let the kid rest up, right? You would think you'd let him rest up. But one of the coaches, he basically was saying that, but I forget the exact word he used. He basically called him like a warrior or a champion or something. He basically said, hey, if Miles Price has any shot of going, he's going to go. Because this kid's a warrior. It's basically what he said, like the heart of a lion sort of thing. So that really has me nervous because that means it's probably going to be a game time decision. So that has me so nervous because I think Xavier White is the best pay down option by a country mile this week. Is it a sure thing? No. But I just mentioned all the reasons for it. Regarding his injury, they said they were just glad there wasn't a break in reference to Miles Price's ankle. Just glad there wasn't a break. That doesn't sound like good news for playing next week to me.
Yeah, so I'm hoping the Warrior sits.
I hope so. I think Donovan Smith might be my favorite quarterback on the slate. Again, though, it's not a sure thing. Nothing is with this Texas Tech offense right now because a lot of the fans are calling for Baron Morton to get the starting job or at least to get more playing time. And this is a coaching staff that keeps saying, yeah, we're going to play multiple quarterbacks. We're going to play multiple quarterbacks. That has me nervous. So Shuck is still out through the bye week. At least there's that. But the fact of the matter is Smith is a dual threat quarterback. He's a big body. I don't think he's any good, but I think he's going to throw the ball 50 times, and I think he's going to run, and I think he has some wide receivers you can stack. So all that just makes it hard for me to pass up. Oklahoma State's defense has been really bad against the pass. Good against the rush, bad against the pass. 106th in passing PPA, 111th in passing explosiveness. They gave up 14 big plays against the Baylor offense that's really been struggling. That really doesn't have many wide receivers, except Monterey Baldwin. Love that kid. But they were torched by Baylor. I think you can get torched by Texas Tech for sure. Another guy I want to call out, I'm not sure I'll get there, but Trey Cleveland. They kind of benched Jaron Bradley last week. He only played 8 pass snaps. Cleveland has moved into more of a full-time role. He played 49 pass snaps last week. That was the most of any outside wide receiver. Loic Fungi, no idea how to say that. Lots of vowels. Let's call him Mr. Vowell. Mr. Vowell, he played 33 pass snaps, and this was a kid they're really hyping up. So I think Cleveland could be their top outside wide receiver at 4K. I think he's fine. Okay. What are we running back with Oklahoma State?
I think again, another guy that I think isn't very good, but Spencer Sanders is having a really good year. I think his price is a little high, so I don't know that I'll get there at 8K. I think this is the week. Braden Johnson had a bad week last week. He was one of the guys we loved and just didn't do much. Last week it was Presley. I think this week
That was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking, Kevin.
So I'm back on. I think Braden Johnson is the better play this week. I don't think Presley does it 2 weeks in a row. So Braden Johnson's probably the only place I'm looking. I really don't want Dominic Richardson at running back. So probably just Braden Johnson.
Yeah, man. Like Texas Tech's defense, I think they're all right. Like their fan base is talking about like this team has a really good defense and our offense stinks. And I'm like, that's kind of the opposite of what you expected going into the year, right? But like their numbers like aren't fantastic. They're 31st in success rate, but 68th in PPA. That's not wonderful. They've given up a lot of explosive runs, 117th in rushing explosiveness. But Dominic Richardson, I think, is the kind of the opposite of an explosive running backs. Being said, if you're getting 24 totes a game, I mean Baylor's a good defense, and he had almost 20 fantasy points. I don't hate Dominic Richardson in cash. I guess you could play him in tournaments as well. But again, yeah, kind of similar to Kevin. Not exactly my favorite player. And the wide receivers have been ugly. Like it seemed like finally we figured it out. It was Braden Johnson because it's always an outside wide receiver that gets it done in this offense. I mentioned it last week. But Braden Johnson, like he's different than the outside wide receivers they've had. He's more of a deep threat than those guys. And I think if the deep ball is not there, then I think nothing's going to be there. But Texas Tech, they give up explosive plays in general, 99th in passing explosiveness. So I could see him getting there this week. Personally, I think the volume is more of a concern than I would like. But Kevin, some big news in this one. Jaden Bray might play. He might be back from the grave.
I heard that last week too. So
yeah, he's min-priced. A guy who a lot of people expected to be the best wide receiver on this team is min-priced playing against Texas Tech. I don't know. Are you going to get there at all?
I don't think so. But I mean, if I hear he's playing, then mid-price, he's certainly worth a look. But I think that's going to be something you're going to look right up to game time to see if he's even going to give it a go.
I agree. I'm not sure I'm going to get there. I think this other kid, they have 2 Greens and 2 Shetrins and 2 Presleys on this team. So forgive me if I get the wrong thing. Yeah, Bryson Green. This kid looks pretty good actually in his stead. Looks like a pretty good red zone target. So I'm not even sure Bray would see a full complement of snaps. The way the coaching staff put it is like he just wasn't really fully up to game speed last week. So I don't know. Are you going to be fully up to game speed to receive a full complement of snaps in your first game back if you weren't there last week? I don't think so. So I think even if he plays, he's probably rotating a little bit. So obviously he can get there at min price, but it's not like it's a smash play in my opinion. Now, if he's like warming up and looks great and they announce him as a starter, that might be a different story. All right, Wisconsin Northwestern. Can we totally skip this one, or do we need to talk about anybody?
I mean, you could obviously talk about Braylon Allen, but again, he's high priced. I could see him having a big game with the Paul Chryst narrative, right? So he was seemed pretty upset that they got rid of Paul Chryst, and
he was pissed off.
Yeah, so I could see him coming out and just having a monster game just to in honor of his ex-coach, but I don't know. He really did me dirty last week, so that's tough.
I'm not getting there.
Yeah,
I love Braylon Allen, the biggest Braylon Allen fan in the world. I'm not getting there. Evan Hull. Surprisingly, I mentioned this last week. Wisconsin's defense hasn't been that good. They ranked 69th in success rate. Nice. 77th in rushing success rate. Jim Leonard, I get the guy's a really good coach and they're supposed to have a really good defensive line, but it just hasn't really looked like it. So, I mean, Evan Hull's he's cheap and he has a monster workload. If you want to get there in cash, he's probably going to catch some passes, but it's not for me. Are you getting there on Evan Hull?
No, I won't. No.
I guess your narrative could be Evan Hull is the guy who just always produces when no one wants to play him.
Yeah,
I guess that's the narrative. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think Wisconsin probably rebounds under Jim Leonard. All right. Ole Miss against Vandy. This one, we're going to have to talk Ole Miss. Obviously, you're playing a Vandy defense that stinks. 101st in success rate overall. Just pretty bad at everything. They've actually been really bad against the pass. 125th in passing PPA and 118th in passing success rate. And surprisingly, really good against the run. They ranked 7th in rushing PPA. But PFF does not agree with that. Like, it's funny noticing the PFF differences sometimes between them and the advanced stats, because they grade them as the 114th team in rushing defense. I think they've pretty much played well against the rush, because that's an interesting one here, right? Like, I think that's where I'm starting my handicap, Kevin. So I'm going to let you talk about the running backs more in a bit. But I wanted to go into detail about Vandy's game logs against running backs. So they've allowed over 150 rushing yards in every single game except for against Hawaii. And Hawaii's a joke of a team, so that doesn't really count. And that includes Elon. But it's not like they've exactly been torched, because two teams had exactly 151 yards, so only 1 yard above that threshold. And then Elon had 152. So I don't know. I think those stats are skewed by Bama burning him for 228 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So overall, Vandy, I think the strength of their defense is the rush. That being said, Ole Miss is the top 5 rushing offense. And they have a banged up Zach Evans who's dealing with a hip injury. So Quenchon Judkins, 6.4K. Tell me about him, Kevin.
Yeah, he might be my favorite player in college football. I love the kid. He's great. He's big. He's agile. He's just really, really good. Even with Zach Evans not banged up, it was a 50-50 split, and Judkins actually, I mean, he just looks better. So especially if Zach Evans doesn't play, Judkins is he's pretty close to a lock, especially in cash games. You have to play him. 6.4 is a great price. Vandy, as you said, has been good against the run, but they haven't. So Alabama's a decent running team, but they don't run like Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they really, really run the football really well. So I think, Vandy may start off well against them, but in the third and fourth quarter, I think you're going to see Judkins break 1 or 2, and his price is great. So I'll have some really good exposure to the kid for sure.
I think I like that. Like, if Evans is dealing with a pretty serious hip injury, to the fact that they weren't offering any updates on him last week, like, if you're playing Vanderbilt, you have to think you're going to kind of squash Vanderbilt. And the running back room is pretty thin behind those two, because Bentley's been out forever. He missed last week. I don't know if he's coming back, especially if Bentley's not back. Like, yeah, Judkins probably gets a pretty good workload. I'm not crazy enough to play Jackson Dart, but I am going to play his price picks overs. Like, pretty much all of them I can play max out yardage and fantasy points, just because Vanderbilt's defense has been so bad against the pass, and Jackson Dart likes to run as well. So, but yeah, nothing for me in DFS. Vanderbilt. Can we skip Vanderbilt?
Yeah, we can skip Vanderbilt. Mississippi's D has actually been pretty good. They looked really good. I watched that whole game last week against Kentucky. I thought they looked really good. So I don't think they'll have any problem against Vandy. Ray Davis, good story, but he's going to get swallowed up this week. So I won't have any Vandy guys.
I agree. I just have to point out they insist on pricing Will Shepherd too low. He's had a pretty good year, but toughest matchup of the year other than Alabama. So not for me. All right. Is this the last game on the slate? Second to last game on the slate. Washington versus Arizona State. Oh my God. Talking about bad teams. Arizona State. Woof. Outside the top 100 in PPA on both sides of the ball. They are playing under an interim coach who is most well known as being a high school coach. They fired pretty much their entire staff. So if you're wondering, how the heck did that guy become the interim coach? Well, it's because they fired the whole staff because they're under an NCAA investigation, tried to have some fall guys, but then they decided to fire Herm Edwards anyway early on into the season. And now they're just corpses on the field. Washington's offense has been terrific. And now they get a bad team in Arizona State. And I don't really think anyone's going to be playing Washington because they're on the West Coast. So I'm predicting ownership to be pretty low here, but the prices are pretty good. So we're going to have to be pretty particular if we're going to play these Washington players. So where are we looking, Kevin?
Yeah, I don't know that I'll get there on Penix. He's been good. He's been way better than he was at Indiana. I didn't think he was very good at Indiana. So, the move to Washington and a much better coach and OC has definitely helped him. But I don't know that I'll get there at 8.5. It's a really, really steep price. Dunze, however you say it, has been really, really good. The past 2 games, he's on a bit of a heater, right? But 7.2 is a little expensive too. I kind of think this is I have a feeling this is a Jalen McMillan game. I think he catches a long one, and at 6.2, it's not a bad price. But overall, these guys are pretty highly priced, and I don't know how much I'm going to get there. But if I had to play one, I'm probably playing Jalen McMillan, actually.
I agree. I think he's a good option. I definitely agree. They're bad against the pass, man. 128th in passing success rate. That's near dead last. And Washington's been throwing for 320 plus every single game. So I would not talk you off of Dunze because he's been fantastic. I think McMillan is the top price adjusted play. I think Penix may be in cash. You could play. And I'm not getting to the running backs personally, but Tuala Papa, if you want some pretty good leverage for a guy who's been just getting double digits every single game, going against a pretty bad rushing defense. They're like 117th in rushing defense per PFF. I guess you could do that, but personally not for me because the volume's not really enough. I think McMillan, like he's $100 cheaper than Worthy, and I think everyone's going to be on Worthy after that 40-point burger. Like if you just go to McMillan and McMillan gets 30 and Worthy has like 20, I mean you could play them both, or you could do that and get some automatic leverage. And I don't think that's a crazy scenario whatsoever. So while I do think I like Worthy more, like it's been pretty hard to me. I've set a few lineups so far. It's been kind of hard for me to get McMillan. Like I really want to, but the pricing's a little difficult. But yeah, I think he's a fantastic play. And Odin's is fine too, because that guy's going for 30 points every game apparently. So, okay, Arizona State. Are we crazy enough to play Arizona State because Washington just gave up 40 points to UCLA?
The only interest I would have is Valladay, the Wyoming transfer. He's actually been pretty good. He's about the only heartbeat they have on that team, and Charbonnet and DTR just ran all over Washington, so he certainly could do it. Again, he's right there at that price point. He's 6.7, so you have 4 or 5 guys in that 6K range that offer some good upside. So I wouldn't mind Valladay. I don't know that I'll get there a bunch, but I wouldn't mind a share or two of him.
Yeah, after watching Washington's defense last week, I'm definitely questioning whether or not they're legit. That's for sure. So I don't hate it, but like I can't play anyone at Arizona State because their offensive line is terrible. They rank outside the top 120 in all my rushing metrics. They're bottom 10 in every single metric. So I mean, Valladay is an explosive player. I really like the kid, but very tough for me to get there. One more thing I want to point out on Washington is Jalen Polk, their third wide receiver. He's 4.5K, playing for a team that should have great success passing the ball. And he's been playing in a full-time role. You wouldn't know that looking at his game logs. But he played 53 pass snaps last week. So how do you play 53 pass snaps and only end up with 1 catch? I don't really know. That's like impressively bad. But he already has one blow-up game against Michigan State, against the other terrible pass defense on the resume. He put up 42 fantasy points. So, I mean, he's an explosive player. I could see Polk getting there. It's definitely a tournament play only. But, I mean, you can make a lot of positive arguments for a guy that's that cheap.
Yeah.
All right. Ohio State, Michigan State. Ohio State, I guess the big news here is they're just going to keep listing their star players as questionable every week. So 2 of their best offensive players, probably the 2 best skill guys, I guess. I don't know. They have a lot of good skill guys, but Trey Henderson, the star running back, they list him as probable. He said he's optimistic they'll have him back. I don't really know how I felt about that quote personally. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, they said they're hopeful to have him back, which usually means you think he's going to play. But that's not exactly the way I read that quote when I saw the full thing. So I'm not sure if either one of these guys are going to play or not. And if they do play, I'm really not sure we get a full workload because we haven't seen that all year from either of these 2 guys. But they're playing a Michigan State team that we talked about last week, and our verdict on them is they downright suck. This is the biggest underdog they've been. I believe I have this right. Just had it up on Twitter since 1998. I believe the biggest underdog they've been since 1998. And in that game, it was also against Ohio State, Kevin, and they won that game outright. So they're going to win this game outright, right? Because it's college football and craziness.
Anything can happen, but I don't think I'll go there.
No. All right. So Ohio State, where do we look?
I think this is a smash game for CJ Stroud. He had a pooper last week, not because he didn't, not because of anything he did, but they played Rutgers and Meatball Williams Mayan ran for 150 yards and 5 touchdowns. So I think this is a CJ Stroud game where there's no reason he can't win the Heisman, and Ryan Day likes to pad his stats. So I think this is a CJ Stroud 405 touchdown passes, right? I don't think Smith and Jigba plays because they don't need him against Michigan State and they're off next week. So that gives them 2 more weeks to rest. So I personally don't think he plays, but I think you can do a Stroud, Harrison and Mbuka double stack for sure. And then I think the bring back is you bring back Jaden Reed for 4.9 on the other side. So that's what I really actually like this week. I think Stroud is going to kill it. I think he's just going to throw all over him.
I don't think I can disagree with any point that you just made. I was going to make them all. So yeah, I love it. I think if you're playing cash, I mean, avoiding Stroud is pretty hard. And if you're playing in tournaments, yeah, you could double stack for sure. I think I want to play Marvin Harrison this week. I did rewatch their last game against Rutgers, and you're right. Yeah, they found out it was the rush, and they just kept going to the rush. Why? Because you're playing Rutgers. Just give Meatball, give him all the carries, give him all the carries. But yeah, Marvin Harrison had like 2 touchdowns. He had one where he reached the ball out, barely didn't get it. Was lucky it wasn't a fumble. He had another in the back of the end zone. He made an absolutely fantastic catch, but it wasn't quite in. I believe his heel was down or something like that. So I could see him just having an absolutely monster week. And then Ucla has been, he's been a stud. And then he was questionable last week. He did play. He ended up losing a fumble, and then I believe he also muffed a punt as well. So not his best week. But the coaches were really pumping him up afterwards and saying like, we had no problems with Ucla. He's a guy you can trust to go right back in there and shake it off. And I don't really think there's any ill effects of that. I think these guys are 2 fantastic options. I think they are both too cheap. Obviously, Ucla is the better price adjusted play, which would make Harrison a possible leverage spot in tournaments. And Ucla is absolutely fine anywhere for sure. Running game. I don't think we can play. If they're both going to play, you can't play them, right? If
Correct.
Henderson plays.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, obviously, they both could get 80 and a touch, but it's just not worth it at their price. And like I said, I think it's a throw the ball all over the field day for Stroud. So, just kind of the game script I see playing out. So,
I agree. I think if he's out, I might actually play some Mine Williams, but I think I'd rather gravitate towards the passing attack. I just think the running back room is pretty thin because Evan Pryor, that kid's a stud. I really liked him as their second or third running back, and with him being out, like it's quite clear if Henderson's out, Meatball is getting pounded in the rock. Jaden Reed at 4.9K. I actually think I might play some Jaden Reed. He had a few drops last week, but he's been returning from injury. He was definitely hurt when they played Minnesota, and we saw Minnesota's pass defense, what they did to Charlie Jones last week. So I think Minnesota's a pretty damn good defense, guys. And then last week he caught a touchdown, even though he dropped a few balls. He could have had a bigger stat line. So yeah, on one hand, it's not the biggest game. On the other hand, they should be playing from behind in this one, throwing the ball plenty, and he's 4.9K as a 1,000-yard receiver. All right. That is the slate. A couple shout outs. If you're into CFF, check out Debbie Watch, their lead CFF guy. We've been doing slate previews. We're going to preview tomorrow's Friday slate. I'm excited to preview because I'm going to the game of the week tomorrow night, Kevin. You know what that is, right?
No.
The home of football. San Jose State, baby.
Ah, nice.
They're playing UNLV. Reason I had to go to that one, Kevin, one, because it's Friday night and it's close by. I don't like going to Saturday games because then I miss the entire slate.
Correct.
So that makes it hard for me. But I think the winner of that game could win the Mountain West.
Yeah. UNLV's, yeah, for sure.
Because UNLV's 2-0. They're 2-0 in conference. So if they win, they go to 3-0. And then if San Jose, if they win, they go to 2-0 with the tiebreaker over at UNLV, which sounds crazy, but like Fresno lost to UConn. Boise State is a mess.
Awful.
They're awful. And then who else is supposed to be good? Utah State. Oh my God. No.
Yeah,
the whole conference is collapsing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be watching my Huskers at in Piscataway at Rutgers. So let's hope they don't lay an egg. That would be very disappointing.
You're going to be at that one Friday night?
Yeah. Yep.
So we're both going to be at games Friday night. I'm looking forward to that. If you're playing the Friday night slate, did you see the pricing for the Rutgers running back?
I did not. I didn't even look at the slate because I didn't think I was going to play it. What is he?
He's min priced, and he's like 19K going against a Nebraska defense there.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's a good play. May have to put a lineup in.
You might. That one's a good play. I'm going to play that, but I kind of hate doing that when I'm at games because I'm like I don't really want to be thinking about that. But
yeah,
I have to play one.
Yep.
All right, Kevin. Any shout outs before we go?
I think this is the week you kind of stay in the middle and hammer that middle range. So we'll see how it works out, but that's the way it's shaking out for me anyway.
I think I agree. All right, fellas. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, we'll be back next week, Thursday night, probably around 7. Usually try to go 7 Eastern.
Yep.
All right. a little later this week. We'll be back 7 Eastern next week. Other than that, enjoy the slate, and thanks for tuning in.